Gospel according to Matthew chapter 28, the first 15 verses form the basis of our text, and more especially a phrase out of verse 6, but I'm going to commence reading verse 1, chapter 28 of the Gospel according to Matthew. I'm reading from the New International Version. After the Sabbath at dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of it that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified." Pay attention to verse 6. He is not here. He has risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I've told you. So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my disciples to go to Galilee. There they will see me." While the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priests everything that had happened. When the chief priests had met with the elders and divided the plan, they gave the soldiers a large sum of money, telling them, "You are to say, his disciples came during the night and stole him away while we were asleep. If this report gets to the governor, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble." So the soldiers took the money and did as they were instructed. And this story has been widely circulated among the Jews to this very day. God bless his word. From the context of the verses that I've read, the first 15 verses of the 28th chapter of the Gospel according to Matthew, and with special emphasis on verse 6, my topic today is "It Was All for Us." Part 4, He rose. It was all for us. Part 4, He rose. And the emphasis, what I want you to really look at, keep in mind, in verse 6 of that chapter. Verse 6 says, "He is not here, he has risen." But here's the phrase I want you to keep in mind. Just as he said. Just as he said. No matter who you are, where you've been, or what you've done, God knows. Last Sunday, when we left Jesus, we left him on the cross. I think we may have buried him. I just remember we buried him not, but we did kill him last Sunday. They executed him and they buried him. And he died in humiliation and disgrace. He had made some claims, and as far as his persecutors and detractors were concerned, he had failed to substantiate his claims. And just to further support their lack of faith in him, they pointed out the fact that he has all of this power, but he's not using his power to come from the cross and be publicly vindicated. He chose to stay on the cross and die rather than come down. To everybody around him, including his disciples, when Jesus died, it seemed like he had been defeated. It looked like he had failed. But if you remember, I also told you on last Sunday that just before Jesus died, he shouted out, it is finished. Jesus was saying, what I came to do, I have done. His detractors thought that they had gotten rid of him and his movement. His disciples were even thinking that maybe, just maybe, they had wasted their time walking around following Jesus for the last 3 years. But Jesus was really saying, it's just begun. There's a lesson here. There's a lesson here that all of us need to remember. Here's the lesson. We need to make every effort to remember that just because it looks dark and hopeless now, it does not necessarily have to be that way always. Hopelessness may appear on the horizon today, but joy just may be beyond that horizon. Just because you don't see what you're looking for doesn't mean that it's out of your reach. Can I get a witness? Anybody ever been hungry in here? I ain't talking about hopelessly hungry. I'm just talking about hungry. You were hungry and you were so hungry you didn't know what to do, but you kept on going toward home because you knew that when you got home there was either some food done or there was something in the icebox. Can I get a witness? The text that I read today, the text that I read for today's sermon is the gospel according to Matthew's account of that first Easter, if you will. And as I was reading that text, verse 6 really jumped out at me. Verse 6 says, he is not here, he has risen just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Now there's a phrase there in verse 6 that really grabbed my attention. That phrase, just as he said. Listen to those words, just as he said. Let them sink into your consciousness, just as he said. Don't let those words and their impact escape you. Treasure them in your heart. When situations and circumstances are looking really bad in your life, remember those words, just as he said. Jesus had told his disciples that he was going to have to suffer and die. But he also told them that he would rise from the dead. In other words, he informed them that tragedy would befall him, but he would overcome the tragedy. The angel sitting at the tomb, the empty tomb of Jesus, was reminding the women that Jesus' words can be depended on. It may not look like it sometimes, but you can depend on God's word. We can take assurance and comfort in his word. He won't leave me and he won't forsake me, just as he said. And you need to remember that, just as he said. Now some of y'all can go back, some of y'all, now this young generation, they don't know anything about this, but y'all folk who are a little older, you remember when you had done something and mama or daddy told you, I'm gonna get you, and they seemingly never got you, and you thought it was all over, and then one day you did something and it broke the camel's back, and when they started whooping you, they say, I told you I was gonna get you. You got that whooping just like they said. Well, when you're going through your troubles, your trials and tribulation, don't ever forget that God promised to be with you just like he said. Go back. Let's go back to the story. It was the first day of the week. It was Sunday. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were in the tomb of Jesus, and they were going there to finish the burial process. After Jesus had been buried, a stone was placed at the opening of the tomb to close it. And as they were on their way to the tomb, the women were concerned about how they were going to gain entrance to the inside, because not only was a stone in front of the opening, but guards were posted in front of the stone. Apparently,
apparently the stone was too large for them to move, and the guards were there to keep them from moving the stone.